All right, well, I think we're in great hands with folks as smart as you going forward. I'm sure you're going to be some great leaders for us in the future. Maureen, do we want to get a quick picture? So it's doubly impressive because they just got back from Houston, so I know they're pretty tired. So thanks for coming tonight. All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item, proclamation. Renee Garner would like to read the National Day of Reason proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the application of reason, more than any other means, has proven to offer hope for human survival upon Earth, improving conditions within the universe, and cultivating intelligent, moral, and ethical interactions among people and their environments. And whereas those who wrote the Constitution of the United States of America, the basic document for governing the affairs of humankind within the United States, based it upon principles delineated within the philosophies distinguishing the historical age of reason. And whereas most citizens of the United States purport to value reason and its application, and whereas it is the duty and responsibility of every citizen to promote the development and application of reason, now, therefore, John F. Higdon, Mayor of the Town of Matthews, does hereby proclaim the 4th day of May, 2024, a day of reason, and encourages all citizens, residents, and visitors to join in observing this day and focusing on the employment of reason, critical thought, the scientific method, and free inquiry to the resolution of human problems and for the welfare of humankind.
Thank you, Commissioner Garner. Move on to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve consent agenda items A through F.
Second. Motion by Commissioner McCool, second by Commissioner Urban. All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 9, receive an interim update on short-term rental regulations. Mr. Camp.
All right, we're gonna do this the old-fashioned way. So last month, we committed to bringing an update on short-term rentals before you all today. So just think of this as a game plan or an outline for how we plan to move forward with developing regulations for short-term rentals. So here you have before you is kind of the game.
I don't think that mic's working either.
Can you just closer?
Yeah, put it closer.
Thank you. Mic. Okay. This is what I'm calling an outline of how we're going to proceed with developing short-term rental regulations for the town of Matthews. On the following page, you have a list of items that you're welcome to scroll through. We can share in a moment. But based on the Schroeder court case, and we've got guidance on the particular aspects, that the types of things you can regulate. However, for the purposes of our UDO, and Maureen, could you scroll down just a tiny bit more? So here you have the changes we're proposing. One, definitions. We just need a definition of a short-term rental. Like that's the first place we go when we're working on a particular use is, do you have a definition? Today, we lack a definition for short-term rentals. Second would be our table of uses. So our table of uses has every zoning district in the town and all of the uses are indicated. and whether they're allowed or not are indicated with a P, which is permitted, or a PC, which is prescribed conditions. Means there's other requirements that go along with it. Finally, chapter 506.4, currently that just, all right. Currently, that chapter just pertains to bed and breakfast establishments. That chapter will be revised to be more encompassing, to reference any type of lodging that you might find that operates out of a home. Finally, and kind of odd, we did look at our home-based business requirements, and there's this reference to tourist homes, which is a very dated, this is like still having boarding house language in your ordinance, probably a reference that's been here 30, 40, 50 years. It's an odd reference. It typically, it's like if you're trying to run an inn out of your house. Most communities don't have this reference, but we want to remove that and clarify how short-term rentals apply to our home-based business standards. And finally, an item that I want to highlight for those of you that have shared some concerns in the community with the board and the concerns the board has as well. These requirements, should they be approved, they're not going to impact the current short-term rentals. They would become, by general statute, they would become legal non-conforming. So essentially, you can't go in and just change your ordinance unilaterally and tell a property owner that a use must cease. So these regulations would primarily apply to any new short-term rentals going forward. So you oftentimes hear the term grandfathered in, but that's in zoning parlance, it's legal non-conforming. So we do plan to have this ready for a June submittal. That would mean a July public hearing on this item.
So, and maybe this is a question for our attorney, this board cannot do anything to restrict the use of any establishment that's currently set up as a bed and breakfast or a short-term rental?
That's correct, Mayor. They would be the legal non-conforming use.
Well,
We will continue to work with we have a policy contact at Airbnb. I know that they already have policy requirements that, for instance, limit parties. So I think it would be good that the town communicate once we have ordinances in place or a new ordinance in place, what our standards are, because those are then in turn shared with individuals using their property through those online platforms.
so if there were some that were problematic, we could address them through that means?
To be determined. Like, I'll give you just an easy example. Let's say we had a requirement that a property had to have 6 on-site parking spaces as a result of how many bedrooms it had. And today they only have 3. We could not require we could not require them to bring it into compliance because they're already there, they're already operating. So that would be an aspect that would be, that you couldn't change what's occurring today. Like day-to-day requirements, or the requirements that you have insurance, or requirements that there's trash pickup, things like that, I think we could have further conversations about.
Mr. Tufano.
Yes, just for clarification for those citizens that have been concerned about this issue, and also for myself as well, is that until such time as the UDO has been changed and approved, then everything is status quo. It stays the same.
Correct.
After the point that the UDO theoretically is changed to help to limit the use of short-term rentals, those rentals that are currently in place at that moment and people are occupying those rentals, they continue until that rental agreement is completed? And then any new rental agreements after that? No, this is the clarification that I need.
Yeah, it's the use as a short-term rental. It's not the individual rental for that day, week, or few weeks. It's an established use on that property if someone's operating a short-term rental.
So you're saying that even if the UDO was changed and someone was using their home as a Airbnb, they would continue to be able to use their home as an Airbnb after the UDO was changed?
Correct.
Interesting.
Another example might be, let's say you have a gas station in town, and the town determines that we want to rezone that property from commercial to residential. Not saying we wouldn't do that, but it would take it out of zoning compliance, but it would still be legal nonconforming, and they could still operate that use for as long as they wanted. That's how nonconformities work, particularly legal nonconformings. It's all based on state statute. It's not a local Matthews requirement.
Could an HOA make a retroactive decision that we know if there was an HOA, could they make a ruling that they don't want Airbnbs in their neighborhood?
I couldn't address that.
They can always put those in their conditions and restrictions, but if conditions and restrictions have been recorded, then they would have to have almost unanimous consent of all the homes in their plan unit development in order for that to apply then to all of that plan unit development, the changes.
This is very frustrating. I mean, our hands are tied. We can't do anything.
Well, all of zoning is always prospective, it's never retroactive. And so this is just a zoning law amendment, and it would apply to any and all new uses, but not to uses already in effect.
And nothing in our UDO restricts somebody from starting a business in their home in a residential area?
Well, that's the frustration of this, because the law doesn't look at them as being a business. I know, but it's the use of their property for someone to spend time there.
Mr. Tufano.
So additional point of clarification is that even if the UDO were changed, we have no relief for those citizens that have come forth to express their concerns about things that are happening in their neighborhoods. Is that a correct statement?
Well, we still have other laws such as the noise ordinance and that type of thing. If there are big events, then the noise ordinance could have application, or other potential criminal statutes could have application, but just not the zoning, not the change in zoning.
Thank you.
Mr. Garner.
Mary, you used the phrase, I think, problem, short-term rentals. And so I'm curious
No,
if.
I'm saying individually, if there was I'm not saying all.
No, I know. My question is
If
about.
there was one that was problematic, is there nothing we can do?
Right. My question is, I guess for the town manager, if we have any record of residential locations that are recurring problems for the police department, or getting nuisance calls or anything like that. And if you don't know the answer, is that some information that we could get within, the bounds of what's acceptable for registration and concerning all of that?
Sure. It is difficult because they're not registered, but I do know that the police department did spend some time locating in general, like going to the Airbnb and the VRBO sites and kind of triangulating general neighborhoods, since you can't get the exact address until you rent, but to at least kind of generally locate and then run some reports to determine if there appeared to be patterns of noise violations, or if there were, any kind of violations that would indicate like a problem property. There were a few very isolated incidents, but nothing that I would say trended towards a pattern that they had record of related to calls to the police department to be investigated and violations found. I can work on finding that email here in just a little bit, but that was what I remembered when I looked at it before.
And to follow up, I did request for one Airbnb in my neighborhood, and there were between 2021 and 2023, there were no calls for service at that address, but several houses down, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 calls for service for a permanent resident in our neighborhood. So just for perspective, I want to add that to the conversation. Also, a lot of the information that I've looked into has really resulted in lawsuits for towns in North Carolina. It seems like Cornelius sort of tipped Airbnb and Vrbo off and got their lobbyist into Raleigh pretty early in 2009. And so some of the results that I found include Chapel Hill has 2 lawsuits currently in court. Iredell County has 3 cases in state court, 2 in federal. Let's see, Wilmington is sort of the case that we're going on. There was one in Buncombe County that was resolved with regulations left on parking. But Buncombe County and Asheville are also still in court on several issues. So I do think we need to, sort of, as 2 of our residents brought up earlier, we don't want to tie ourselves up in court perpetually on any number of reasons.
And just to clarify, Commissioner Garner, I did find that data that was pulled. So there were 10 calls that were found over a 3-year and 3-month period across the entire town. And that was where it was directly tied to a short-term rental. And half of those were actually initiated by the property owner of the short-term rental. It was not an adjacent neighbor who had an issue with it. Thus far, year to date in 24, this was as of March 4th, there were 0 calls in reference to any issue at a short-term rental in town. And so again, that was 10 calls across the entire town over a 3-year, 3-month period.
Thank you for that information.
What is our plan going forward? You're going to make these recommendations or we're going to vote on this or?
So it's an amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance, so it would be a zoning motion proposed by staff. We'll work with Mr. Buckley once we have a draft in place and look at, just to Commissioner Garner's point, to ensure that we're not proposing something that would create legal problems for the town. I think that's, no matter the issue, that's always our angle. Our first starting point is not to create lawsuits. So we're making sure we're in compliance with our development ordinance.
I would like to see us make an effort to inform our HOAs that they do have the power to restrict these. And I think we should educate them because before it becomes problematic, maybe somewhere. I'm not saying it's a problem now, I don't know, but.
I will say that one of the advantages we would have by amending the UDO, these changes would be sent to the corporate bodies of the, like Airbnb, in other words, the internet providers of this service. They build local regulations into their regulatory paperwork with their customers. And so we may not have to worry about if it's non-conforming because Venmo and Airbnb and those internet providers would already be putting those into their current regulations anyway. So, I mean, you want to go ahead and do something and just don't feel like, well, it's frustrating. Just go ahead and do something so that we have something on the books.
And we discussed a little bit about length of time. Commissioner Garner, I think you and I were discussing that length of time you could stay. Is that something we can regulate? Like we could say you have to stay for X number of days or?
From what I remember, if you require like a 2-night stay, it triggers some sort of, I'm looking at Attorney Buckley for this, like some sort of disclosure of some records, I would say.
Well, records are not necessarily the problem. Registration is the problem. And so you don't want to tie anything into looking like registration or intertwine with registration. But you can define what a short-term rental is, but basing it on each day is getting into a danger zone, I think.
A lot of communities, they would use a definition just to set that they're typically less than 30 days. But from the community's perspective, anything longer than 30 days is really a long-term residential rental. So they weren't saying that there was a minimum and a maximum. They were just saying in general, if it's less than 30 days, that's a long-term rental.
Commissioner McCool.
Jay, I had a question. When we're talking about this, we're not just specifically talking about short-term rentals that are run by online websites? Because I've known plenty of people who just do it by word of mouth and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
That's usually in more touristy areas, but would the regulations that would be proposed also cover that? I know it's probably harder to enforce because they're not on an open platform.
It would be regardless of if
Okay.
it was done individually.
Right.
So that we don't say the word registration, that's what got Wilmington in trouble, but you can require a zoning permit, for
Right.
instance. You can require, which is, it's not an inspection, but it would require a property owner to come to the town and say, this is my intent on this property and this is how I meet your regulations. So at least it's not happening without our knowledge, on an honor system, more or
Right.
less.
Thank you.
Part of my thinking was related to that. If we had some way of knowing facilities and properties that were having problems, then maybe a letter, not an intimidating, threatening letter, but a communication from the town, maybe part of our engagement of our neighbor that we've had some concerns and state our concerns. Is that part of our approach? I think it might be a wise approach, communicating with our neighbors any concerns we might have when there are problems on that property. I don't know if we need to write that in there, but maybe a plan to respond to the neighbors when there are problems instead of just taking litigations or, strong arming them, but communicating with them.
Commissioner Garner, do you have a comment or question?
I just have a comment that I think it makes sense to engage some of the short-term rental companies in this conversation, because certainly when you stay, let's use Airbnb as just as an example, the owners of homes are also rating the tenants. So if they have a bad tenant, they are letting everybody else know, you don't want to rent to this person because they are destroying your house or they are not good with the neighbors or, X, Y, and Z. They could answer a lot of these questions about what is required on the backside, but also give some suggestions so that there's a good relationship with the town, fostering, good neighborliness.
Yeah.
So again, what are our next steps?
We'll have a draft ready. As I said, it'll be submitted publicly to you all in June. If we follow our typical schedule, we would have a public hearing in July and a decision as early as August.
Okay.
If we stay on schedule.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Move on to new business. 10A, consider public art on signal cabinets. Melissa Johnson.
Ryan, do you have my presentation? Good evening, Mayor, Board, town staff. Thanks for your time this evening. So the next public art adventure for the town of Matthews are signal cabinet vinyl wraps. Something you may have seen in other cities, towns throughout the country. Okay, thank you. All right, so what is a signal cabinet? It is that typically not this pretty, just a metal cabinet that is next to an intersection, has all of the traffic signal controls inside of it. This one is in Charlotte and is designed by Lori Smithwick. And just to give you some background on the process of how that happens, some signal cabinets people do paint on, but for here in Matthews, we're looking to have a high resolution digital image of whatever the artwork is printed and adhered onto the cabinet. That way, if we want to remove it, it's an easy process and we can change it out over the years as we want. So the town of Matthews owns 5 different signal cabinets. This means we don't have to go through the NCDOT process of approval for these cabinets and the artwork. We go through just our town process with town staff. And so these are the 5 different locations. I do have images with the artwork, so that way you can see the actual location with the design that's proposed. So at Trade Street and Matthews Street, that one is on a pole. The other 4 are freestanding cabinets. So we put out this call for artists locally and regionally, and we had 27 total submissions from 14 different artists. Our advisory committee reviewed all of the submissions, selected the artwork and the locations for each one. We did have a really good variety of artists and artwork, which you'll see the different styles that we got. And the only requirement was that it had to be a digital image. So some of the artwork you're gonna see may be fiber art, stained glass, and which is kind of cool because it's not just a painting. It's something that has texture that'll be visible whenever pedestrians, bicyclists are walking by. Car traffic most likely won't see the detail from where they're sitting at the intersection, but it is visible to anybody who's walking by. Oh, sorry, one more thing. And so one of the artists does live in Matthews, the other 4 are local to Charlotte. So they are all local artists that we have for these projects. And we're working with Lori Smithwick, who is not only a local artist who did that signal cabinet that I showed at the beginning, but she's also a professional graphic designer. And she has curated several of these projects in Charlotte, in the Noda neighborhood and South End. So she has a lot of experience under her belt and is a wealth of knowledge. These are just the 5 different locations, and then I'll go into each one individually.
What's amazing to me is how large the cabinets are in today's, was that 1950? I mean, these things are humongous. I mean, you have a laptop that can, send up the space shuttle. It's amazing that those cabinets have to be that large, but it's opportunity for us to put art on them anyway. But.
Absolutely. And they are all different sizes. So I don't know if you can see because my image is covering up the location of that spot, but this is one of the smaller cabinets. Thank you. And this is the one at Trade and Matthews. And so this is one of those perfect examples. This is a fiber art. And so this high resolution digital image is what will be printed, and it'll be positioned in such a way that it looks the best for that location. So it's going to be printed in 4 different panels. Lori's job is also to oversee all of the installation. So she is there on site when the installation company is there adhering it to the cabinet, so she can make sure it's placed correctly, turned the right way, all of those details that are really important.
So to be clear, the art is actually flat. It's just it's smooth, but it just looks like that. Okay.
Exactly. So that's
cool.
one of the great things about this is being able to see that texture.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
And this is the artist who lives in Matthews. So we chose her for the downtown Matthews location. Oh, clicking. Okay, thank you. You say that. Oh, too far. The second location, this is off of Fullwood. This is a painting, but it will be, again, high resolution digital image and printed. Right off of Fullwood at the Axe Retirement Community entrance there. This is at Moore Road, Matthews Mint Hill Road, and a little conversation behind this one is, so this is a cartoon artist. So thinking about a lot of the pedestrian traffic in this area are high school students coming from Butler, something that kind of speaks to them a little bit more than maybe the rest of the demographics in Matthews, something different. And it's already in 4 different panels, so it can be positioned really easily on that cabinet. This is a stained glass image. It's beautiful. And this one will be over at Northeast Parkway and Sycamore Commons at that stoplight right next to Michael's. And so in the original memo, this one had an orange background. And so the artist has updated it since orange is associated with construction zones and was a concern by Susan, the town engineer. So she made it a cooler color, so it's a little less distracting. But it's still a bright, fun pop of color. And this one is Foster Williams All Scotch Shoes. So this is at Crestdale and Matthews Mint Hill Road. So each artist gets a $350 stipend for their artwork. Lori Smithwick's total is $1,500. And again, she's been involved in the process since the beginning, and she's going to oversee all of the installation. And she's in contact with all of the artists and the printing company. And then Speed Pro came out and measured each cabinet because of course each one is a different size. And so it couldn't be standard. And so that is the total of their fee to come out and measure, to print, and then install the vinyl. So the total project cost is just over $7,000, which is already in our budgeted line item for public art.
All right.
There's the goal and the recommended motion. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to
I
answer.
think this is awesome because those are otherwise pretty ugly. So this makes them a little more appealing. Commissioner Tufano, do you have a comment?
Yes, first of all, Melissa, I continue to admire you and your work that you do to try to make this place a beautiful place to be and live. And this is actually lovely. But I have a few technical questions. Is this something that's going to stay just like the current art where it's there for a year and then it gets changed? Or is this a long-term art piece of artwork?
So right now, the proposed plan is that it'll be long-term, whatever long-term looks like. If it is a couple years down the road, we'll see how it's weathering. They typically last years on signal cabinets without issue. But if it's something that down the road we want to switch it out just to have something new to look at, we can budget for that.
Secondly, the DOT, of course, has a number of these around. Have you communicated with them to find out how long the process is for them to get approval to put artwork on their signal cabinets here in Matthews?
I haven't asked, no. I don't know that it's an extremely lengthy process, but we have been in touch with them just for communication purposes.
I would think if we approve this, which I feel confident we will, is that the next step would be to spread this beauty throughout and to put it on the DOT cabinets as well.
So that'll be for whoever may be taking up public art when I am not here.
What?
You stole my thunder. I was going to mention.
No.
Yeah.
Bomb drop.
Melissa's going to be leaving us, unfortunately, and I just want to say thank you for your many years. How many years have you been with Matthews?
6.5 working.
6.5. And outstanding job always. We're going to really miss you. And if you want to reconsider.
When is your last day?
Next Friday.
Oh.
We got the bad news last Friday. We've already tried to talk her out of it, but she's got a great offer. It's a great career opportunity. So as heartbroken as we are, we certainly understand and wish you the best, and just know that the door is always open for you to change your mind or come back at a later date.
I appreciate it. I told Corey when he's ready to retire, I'll be coming back.
I will be calling you. I'm just saying.
Congratulations. And in that
Thank
case,
you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the signal cabinet designs listed at the above locations for the Matthews Traffic Signal Cabinet Public Art Project.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Tufano. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Urban. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That passed unanimously. And thank you for everything, Melissa. We're really
Thank
going to miss
you.
you. Yeah, I found out because somebody approached Melissa about a project and she said, I'm leaving. You left S&S person. And the person called me back and I'm like, what do you mean she's leaving? And what is this travesty of justice here? All right, we'll move on to the next item, 10B, receive the monthly budget report from Teresa Falk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. Now I'd like to thank you also for allowing me to do this by Zoom tonight. I am living my best life today, being grandma and taking care of my grandson. So today has been a very good, crazy day, but I do appreciate you allowing me to do this by Zoom tonight. And as you have seen in your packet, you have this month's financial report, and everything in Matthews is continuing to move forward the way we anticipated it would. Local option sales tax is still 2.75% higher year over year as compared to this same time last year. Recreation revenues are 25.15% higher year over year. Their Parks and Rec has done a great job of garnering interest in, all the programs that are out there. And so their revenues are doing really well this year. General fund revenue as a whole is 12.16% higher year over year than at the end of March 2023. And tourism fund revenue as a whole is up 4.15% year over year. And as we discussed last month, starting with next month's monthly budget report, we will be adding some graphics to kind of to put all these on a line graph or dot graph to show you all the difference in the comparisons year over year, so that maybe it's, because I'm a very visual person also, so hopefully the visual context will help bring things more into context of how much the growth is, or how things are narrowing, or how things are continuing to grow in the town of Matthews. And if that's all I have, does anyone have any questions?
Have any questions for Teresa? Okay, thank you. Enjoy that grandchild.
Thank you.
Move on to 10C, consider contract for door access control system for town facilities. Malia.
Hi, yes. Excuse me. Good afternoon. So the current door lock and access control system that we use was installed in 2013. Over the last several months, we've been experiencing some operational failures that has to date prohibited us for adding people or users to the system. So any new hire, we can provide them a badge, but likely they would not have door access to the secured areas. At this time, or really over the last couple of months, we have been working with the current vendor to identify some solutions for updating the firmware, et cetera, of the system, but we have not had any success in that manner. The vendor did recommend that we replace all the control hardware and reprogram the entire system. However, the control hardware that they use is currently unavailable, and they do not have an anticipated date for availability of that equipment. So during this time, we have contacted several vendors to obtain a quote for a new system or a system replacement solution. And as part of that process, our IT staff met with vendors to demo the product, to talk to them about what our needs are, and to take into consideration future needs of the system. And based on our evaluation and proposal, we are recommending ADM Security Systems based on their responsiveness, their costs, and their experience and their product offering. The cost for the system replacement is $97,017, which that is covered or will be covered with existing general fund dollars based on some anticipated savings. This does include Fire Station 3. And we hope that if this contract is approved, to have that work completed within or before the end of this fiscal year. So the recommended action is to authorize the town manager to sign a contract with ADM Security Systems for the replacement of a door lock and access control system for all town facilities. I will just say to note, the other vendors ranged anywhere from $118,000, and the highest vendor was $159,000. So just to kind of give you a range of quotes that we received.
Malia, we discussed this briefly in the agenda review with Mayor Pro Tem, and this is for a card access system, correct?
Correct.
Did you also consider a keypad access? I'm familiar with many of our companies around here have a keypad that you just punch in a number to access.
So we did not look at a keypad access.
I don't know if it's any less expensive or not, but.
And that was one of the reasons for that, is because we can use our existing card reader equipment as part of this upgrade. So just taking into consideration costs, but that could be an option for us if needed.
I know at times people have misplaced their card. So if you didn't have a card and you had a keypad, you wouldn't need a card. But I'm fine. I will trust that you guys did adequate review, and it's the least expensive option for this type of technology. Commissioner Tofano.
Yes, I'd like some details on the statement that it'll be covered by anticipated savings. Two questions. How much are the savings, and which line items in the budget are the savings being derived?
I can speak to that. So we have salary savings in the police department. And so we are able to fund this purchase using salary savings. So just basically, we don't need a budget amendment in order to move forward with this purchase. We can fit it within the existing approved FY24 budget.
Well, the first question was the dollar amount of the anticipated savings.
We have projections through the end of the year, but we don't have anything finalized. But salary savings across all departments, we're close to $1 million across all lines in salary and benefits.
And is that because we were not able to fill the positions?
So we have had a number of positions that have remained open, particularly in the police department. So some of those have remained at the patrol level, but we have also had a number of management positions that we were waiting to fill until our new chief got here. And so now that he's here, we are running processes and getting those positions filled. So we anticipate that those positions will not be vacant in FY25.
So the bulk of the anticipated savings are from
Yes.
payroll?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, almost completely.
Okay, thank you.
If I could ask additional questions, would it be possible, and I know that when you're trying to get access for the next 60 days, it would be challenging, but would it be best that this item would be considered for the 24-25 budget and approve it in that versus approving it today?
So I would certainly recommend using your existing approved budget because those dollars are already fully funded and accounted for. If we put it in the FY25 budget, then it's competing with all of the asks in FY25. So we have the dollars in hand today because of the salary savings that we can move on this. The total dollar amount is what brings it before you all, since it exceeds the $90,000 contractual limit that I have without getting board permission. So we definitely prefer to not have things compete if they can fit within the existing approved budget.
Is this primarily at the police department?
This is town-wide. We are having failures system-wide. We are not able to add new people to the system. So as an example, our police chief is having an interesting time getting into various buildings right now. So we would like to certainly have a working system, but it's a system-wide failure, and there's no relief and no guarantee in sight if we continue to invest in the existing system, which is why we felt the need to go out and look at replacing the entire system. It's really just at the end of its useful life.
Mr. Urban?
So Malia, the question comes down to, is this hardware equipment proprietary or is it open market? So we're not locked in.
This particular system is open market. One of the other vendors did have a proprietary, and so we definitely want to stay away from that to guarantee we can have access to parts when we need them. So yes, it's an open market.
Thank you.
Good question. Commissioner McCool.
I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the town manager to sign a contract with ADM Security Systems Incorporated for the replacement of door lock and access control systems for all town facilities.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner McCool, a second by Commissioner Garner. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Purposely paused.
I'm going to do something again, a little fun. I received, I believe during our last meeting, Lori handed me an envelope from Mrs. Dixon's second grade class at Elizabeth Lane Elementary. And looks like the entire class wrote a letter to the mayor. I'll read a couple of them. They're somewhat similar, but this one says, "Dear Mayor Higdon, I am a second grader at Elizabeth Lane Elementary. Have you ever heard of a grassroots movement? ? Well, we started one about rain. We want people to like rain as much as they like sun. Would you consider helping us by sharing our slogan, Rain Rocks, with others? Sincerely, Adele Harrison." Another student said, I'm a second grader at Elizabeth Lane Elementary class. We started a grassroots movement to change people's mind about rainy days. Would you consider helping us by sharing our slogan? And again, pretty funny. If anybody wants to read these, they're pretty humorous, but I asked Lori to print out a couple sheets that say rain rocks, and I'd like to take a picture with our board that says rain rocks. Let's holding this up, and I will respond and write back to the students. Really just a fun little thing. I think the teacher was working with them to work on their writing skills, and they all did very well. Some of these are pretty humorous if anybody wants to read through them. Some were a little more lengthy than others that had a lot of detail on why rain rocks. But if we could go to the front, I'd like to take this picture with the whole board, and I think it'd be something fun. Rain rocks. Right. At first, I thought they were going to throw rocks at us, like rain rocks. Is this the rain rock? I think they're a little off in second grade. I'm pretty sure that's like their little. Yes, you're right. You're from. The science classes are awesome. Thank you for that. I will respond to Ms. Dixon's class when I get a chance, and I'm sure if somebody could send me that photograph, I'd appreciate it, and we'll respond, and I'll copy everybody on that. Thank you so much. Well, since we have the Charlotte Catholic folks here, why don't you come up and introduce yourselves? Come on up. Just tell us your name and what grade you're in and why you love Matthews so much.
Hi, I'm Hallie Patrick. I'm a senior at Charlotte Catholic. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one out of this group that actually lives in Matthews.
Okay, well, all right.
Yeah. But yeah, we have an assignment for our political science class to go and observe like a town hall meeting. So we chose today here.
You picked a really short one. You're lucky. Usually you're here till midnight, so you're really like, we're almost done, so you did good.
So, okay.
You have plans for school next year? Are you going to go to college?
I'm gonna attend NC State University. So
Awesome.
go back.
Wolfpack.
Did you go to NC
Yeah,
State?
I'm a Wolfpack graduate. I sure am. So is my daughter, by the way. So, yeah.
My name's Sydney Loden. I'm a senior at Charlotte Catholic, and next year I'm going to UNCW.
Awesome. Another great school.
I'm Lydia Cole. I'm a senior at Charlotte Catholic, and I'm going to Appalachian State.
All right. You guys are going all over.
My name is Cornell Beans. I'm senior at Charlotte Catholic. I'm going to Arizona State.
Arizona. Wow. Okay.
My name is Lori Babbage. I am also a senior, and I'm going to Husson University.
Awesome. Where is Husson University?
It's in Maine.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, we appreciate you coming tonight. And thank you. Thank you for introducing yourself. We appreciate that. Do you guys want to get a picture with me? Everybody does. Yeah. It's pretty pathetic when that's your reward that you get a picture with me, but. Teacher, the tall guys in there. Rain rocks.
I've never seen you that excited. That
Finally, I do have one more thing that I wanted to share with the board. I was with my wife Penny this weekend at Hearth and Patio over in Charlotte. And it's on Monroe Road. It's been there since the 1970s, been there a long, long time. A lovely couple owned that place. And I started talking to them and we started talking about Matthews, and several of the employees were just going on and on about how awesome Matthews was. They come here every weekend, how they love the restaurants and the great job we've had. And one of the owners said, please share with your board how awesome Matthews is. And so we don't get a lot of compliments, so I thought I wanted to share that with you. Said your board's doing a great job and the staff, and we just love Matthews. So, and to have everybody that worked at the store go, yeah, and agree was pretty nice to get a rare compliment. All right, Lori did mention about committee reports, and this is kind of new. And we're going to start doing this on occasion, and I'm not going to hold anybody's feet to the fire tonight, but we want to start doing this. All of you are on various committees, and I think at least quarterly or at the very least twice a year, we'd like to have everybody that's on a committee come and just give a 3 or 4 sentence or however long you want to talk update about your committee. So does anybody have any committee reports they'd like to share today? Commissioner Tufano.
Yes, my committee and I work with the town manager on this is what's called the Quad, and that is the towns of Matthews, Mint Hill, and Stallings, and occasionally Indian Trail. And the purpose of that is to talk about legislation or Department of Transportation projects or that may affect us as a group of cities, but also to share ideas about how to improve not only Matthews to listen to others to improve, but also for them to listen to others and to make improvements based on our experiences. Our next meeting is May 2nd in Mint Hill at 7:30 a.m. And as far as I know, it's open to the public. So I can see everybody in the front row is eager to get up at 7 in the morning. But it's not a very, it doesn't meet that often, perhaps every 2 or 3 months, but I've always found it beneficial, and I hope it continues as an establishment. Thank you.
Commissioner McCool.
Yeah, I'll give two committee. The Education Committee just met on Thursday, Maureen and I, or 2 Thursdays ago, something like that. They look like they're starting to get some good direction. Things are good. I think they have a new member, right? Isn't there a new member on the Education Committee? So things are good there. And then the other one, a little bit maybe bigger news, is Centralina Regional Council. We had our meeting a month and a half ago. And they have really, really good resources. And so I was going to hopefully ask that we have a representative from Centralina come speak to our board and kind of talk about grant opportunities and other opportunities throughout the state. They are a plethora of resources. And then lastly, and I emailed Lori, the Municipal Education Advisory Committee for the county has been dissolved and has been changed into a Capital Projects and Bond Committee. They would like to keep the people who are on MEAC on the county from the towns to stay on that committee to be kind of part of the driving force for this newly passed bond. So I need to be reappointed to that by this board before May 27th to join that new committee. Thank you.
All right, and I'll give a quick update. I'm on the Metropolitan Transit Commission, and for your guys' benefit, that's the group of folks that works on all the funding for public transportation for our buses and light rail and things like that. We are going to meet Wednesday, and we're discussing the upcoming budget for the coming year and also the interlocal agreement, which the town managers have been working on renegotiating. So we'll be discussing that on Wednesday. So good stuff. Anybody else have anything? So please try to remember this. It's the second. It's going to be really informal. If you have a meeting, and probably be helpful to share it in advance with Lori if you have a few sentences, so she'll have that she can cut and paste into the minutes. But we'll just do an update. I think it's good for the public as well. And it's something that we haven't done for years. We probably should have always been doing this. So just for no other reason to inform the rest of the council and then to inform the public about what's going on these committees that we work on. So thank you. Move on to the town attorney's report,
No report, Mayor.
town manager's report.
No report.
Before we adjourn, I wanted to point something out. This Friday, Sergeant McGuirter and I did a ride along, and it was just about the most fun time I have ever had. Don't be hiding back there. We did a ride along Friday evening. He graciously took me out for 6 or 7 hours, and I learned a lot about the department. And I want to suggest to every member of this board to try and do it. Brandon, the police department were way accommodating. It was really interesting and got a whole new breadth of knowledge on our police department. So recommend that. And thank you, Brandon.
Did you ride in the front or the back?
It's the first time I've ridden in the front of a police car, so it was nice.
With or without cuffs? Okay. Okay. I'm glad you reminded me. I did want to also remind everyone that, reminding of another event, our former Commissioner Pastor Whitley is having Law Enforcement and Public Servant Appreciation Day on May 5th at his church. So there's going to be a church service at 10 a.m. and then immediately following a Law Enforcement and Public Servant Appreciation Day. It's always a great community event that we like to go to and usually eat some great food and show our appreciation for those folks. So please put that on your calendar. And also, I'll just like you to ask you to check the town calendar. So we have many events coming up in the next couple weeks. I think on May 4th is the BAPS charity walk, which oftentimes many people on this board participate in. I have for many years, so you can look into that. We have Festival of India on April 27th, Beach Fest on May 11th. So please, lots of stuff coming up in the town of Matthews. So please check our community calendar to get all those events noted. But I know I'll see many of you at those events. So thank you. If there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Good night.